Caught me off guard. Hi, welcome to Loudest Crow. My name is Jonathan Louderback.
Caught myself off guard. I'm Justin Kroh. What?
You did that on purpose. Yeah, you did that. I was just taking a drink and he started recording.
I'm Justin Kroh, and we're here to cough through the noise.
Motherfucker, you really ruined my vibe here. I'm going to be irate for the rest of the podcast. Is it irate or is it... No, it's irate.
Yeah, you're just going to like progressively get angrier and angrier throughout the whole podcast.
I mean, that's just life, you know? By the time you're 40 and you have, like, teenage kids... Well, I guess 40, 45-ish and have teenage kids, you're going to be like... You're supposed to be just mad at everything.
You're supposed to be mad at everything. It is your role as a human.
But watching this guy's shorts, his whole thing is, like, relatable content. It's kind of a movement right now. And he had this one video where it's like, okay, go call the pizza guy. And it's like, I don't really... Just call the pizza guy. What's the issue? Guy calls the pizza guy. He's like, why are you stuttering? It's like really, pointing out the anxiety of doing all these simple things.
All these simple things. Speaking of like anxiety doing simple things, dude. I've been looking in the mirror lately, and like, I gotta go to the dentist. I don't want like doctor's visits and dentist visits. It's like you don't want to do it because you almost feel like, well, not only the money, but like psychologically, you don't want to go in there and be like, "Hi, I am too weak to solve my own physical problems. Please come here and resolve them for me." Like, you don't want to admit to like needing physical help.
I guess I have a different philosophy on it because I admittedly also don't inherently like going to the dentist or the doctor, but that's because I feel like you can ignore. It's like there are certain things you could ignore that aren't wrong until somebody tells you they're wrong, and you're like, shit, I guess that is an issue.
Well, see, like, okay, reason I gotta go to the dentist, and I'm kind of mad because I take care of my teeth. I go pretty hard with my brushing, and I have a retainer I have to wear every night. And the problem is I don't take care of the retainer well enough because like I'll rinse it off every morning and then every time before I put it in, but I don't like scrub it or anything, and I think that's the problem. Because there's like a tiny little divot forming on this tooth here, and then like a weird shelf or something forming on this tooth here, and they're in the exact same spots as like
where the retainer would sit.
Yeah, where the retainer would sit. So I'm like, dang! Despite my best efforts, this thing that's supposedly there to keep my mouth healthy is making my mouth unhealthy, and that sucks. Which when you think about it, happens a lot. Like sometimes you'll like invest in solving some kind of problem, and then the solution to that problem will just make more problems. It's just like a lot of unforeseen side effects.
Well, it's like there's one wisdom teeth surgery.
Yes, I've had that before. Yeah.
No, I've had my wisdom teeth taken out, but it's like for a lot of folks, they can grow into their wisdom teeth. So, like, even a dentist can take a look at your mouth structure and say, oh, I think your mouth structure is not favorable for the teeth. We should take them out now before it damages the rest. Which is a fair take. It's a thing that actually happens. But then I have known people, and I'm not saying, like, this is totally anecdotal and not, like, I'm not saying I know better than a dentist. But I have known people who have, like, been told that by their dentist and who have been just fine without taking them out.
Yeah. So
it's like, doctors and dentists and other medical professionals, they know what they're talking about. You should listen to their advice. But there's always going to be that one anomaly in the statistic that will just be standing contrary to it. And like you always have to have that in your mind. It's like, what if I'm the anomaly?
Exactly. Yeah. Once you have that, you can't let go of it. And that's like another thing that just like demotivates you from like taking action whenever something comes up. And it's weird because it's not exactly being lazy. It's almost like willful ignorance.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's like, I'm sure I'm fine. I can work past it. It's also kind of like the whole phenomenon of, the toad or the frog in the boiling, and the water being set to boiling. Yeah. Well, that isn't actually a thing. A frog will jump out. Like, it is a real thing for humans in various circumstances. Like, if circumstances very, very slowly change over a long period of time, you adapt to it every step of the way, and it can be hard to really realize that there is an issue.
Well, yeah, I think that's like the right there summarizes the obesity epidemic.
I think it does. I think that I don't think it summarizes. I think it is a core critical component of it. I think that there's so much that goes into the obesity epidemic.
Well, like there's also like the kind of foods that we eat that are available to us, the kinds of food that are cheap, stuff
Well,
like
the type
that.
of activity, I was just talking about this with Randy the other day. It's like, I don't know statistically and scientifically or empirically, I should say, how much a walking culture plays into maintaining a healthy weight, but it has to play some part of it.
It does have to play some part.
Because, in America, you can go basically you could travel 20 miles and still sit down your entire day, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, the most walking most people do, if you work an ordinary office job, you walk from your house to your car, and then from your car to your work, once you get to the parking lot. And that's, like, the extent of the physical activity that some people have on a day-to-day basis.
It's really sad. And I can't help but like watching those like urban development channels on YouTube and seeing like all these cities where you can just walk from place to place, and they don't have these huge segregated areas for like residential space and commercial space and stuff. And I look at that and I'm like,
It's so cool.
It sounds so nice. It looks so
It's
cool.
like, the reason you live in a city is because you want stuff to be close.
Yeah.
Now, cities can be really shitty because you're close to the bad stuff too. But it really blew my mind. The square mileage of Boston is 89 miles. The square mileage of our town, Springfield, Missouri, is 89 miles. Isn't that weird to think
that's
about?
so
Isn't
weird
that
to think about.
Oh. Now, Boston isn't the biggest of cities. It's only 600,000. And we have about 200,000-ish. We're getting up there. But still, that is triple, almost quadruple the population.
Yeah.
In
the same amount of space.
Same amount of space.
Oh, that's crazy, dude. Yeah, and like, you know, I'll be on the road and stuff, and like I like driving. I think it's nice. I think it's relaxing, and it's nice to be able to, you know, go far on your own without having to.
It's
rely
relaxing
on, like,
under certain circumstances, but like,
well, rush hour, yeah, no rush hour.
Rush hour or any sort of traffic is just so stressful.
Yeah,
you know?
But like I don't know. I'm at that point where I'm like, you know, is it nice to go where I want, when I want, without having to rely on like public transportation for a schedule or something? Yes, but you know, if anything, that just. It's not necessarily saying, oh yeah, cars are better. It's just saying that our public transportation system has a lot of room for improvement.
I'm not sure how much you know about the history of cars in this country and car-based infrastructure, but it's the truth of it that car companies lobbied American cities to build up their cities to be car-based, to sell more cars.
Yeah.
Like, it used to be like in New York, Boston, all these big cities on the East Coast in particular, that if you were in the big city, the streets you walked on the streets, because there's a difference between a street and a road. A road is meant to be a high speed, straight-ish, long stretch of infrastructure for wheeled vehicles between 2 points, and streets are meant to be, you know, traversable urban places where you can walk between buildings.
Yeah, and like I think where America got it right is an interstate and highway system.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I think it's fantastic.
It's a superstructure.
But within the cities, that's where it starts becoming a problem.
Well, it's the fact that the superstate and highway system doesn't stop at the cities.
Yeah.
It just goes straight through the cities.
Go straight through them.
You know, it's because it's like cars don't, like, because I'm sure you've seen like pictures of New York where it's just literally gridlock.
Yeah.
Like, cars don't work in big urban areas like that. People barely work in big urban areas like that. Now, there's not this big, clunky, personally driven piece of material, much less if somebody gets into an accident at some point, right?
Yeah.
It's just... It's a system that was put into place by commercial interests, lobbied into place by commercial interests, that perhaps in the Midwest has some basis in being functional. Like, it's fairly functional in a fairly spread out Midwestern town like we live in, you know, where the country is almost synonymous with the edge of town. But as soon as you get into an urban center of any sort of scale, it just don't work the same.
Yeah.
It does not. Like, most cities in Europe, like, you drive your car, and you can drive in the city, of course, but you drive your car to where you're going to park it while you're in the city. Right? And then you take public transportation or you walk.
Well, yeah, and, you know, I do notice that, like, you know, whenever I go downtown here, that's what I'll do. I'll just find a parking spot, like, within 1 mile of wherever I'm wanting to go. And I'll settle for that and then walk around. Yeah. And, I don't know, it also just makes me feel... It gives me time to take things in, because when you're just driving past them and whizzing past them, it's like Fahrenheit 451. Anytime they wanted to put up a billboard, they had to make the billboard hundreds of feet long so people could read it, because they were just zooming by so fast. And there is definitely like a meditative power to just being there, walking around, taking things slow.
Yeah, being in... It's much easier to live in the moment. I will say too, driving is it's hard to take things inherently because you're going so much faster, and that makes it more dangerous.
It does.
Right? It's like accidents in walkable cities do happen, but much less than driving accidents while driving. So I watched a video on it, so I'm not an expert, but like there's this concept that American roads, or streets rather, are not streets or roads, they're stroads. They're this weird combination of both. And while you're driving down a lot of these roads, like say for us like Kansas Expressway, it's a fairly high speed road. You're meant to go like 40 miles on it, but yet you have all of these not even lighted entries and exits on the left and right that you have to keep your eyes on.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if you ever experienced it, but you're going high speed and somebody's, like, not stopping whenever they're pulling up to you, and you're like, are they going to fucking stop? And you just have to trust.
Yeah, it's scary. There's so much trust.
Yeah, you have to just have faith that they're not going to just go. And sometimes they do.
And sometimes they do, and it's bonkers, and it's stupid, and it's dumb. But, on the other hand, driving is fun, especially when you're out in the country.
So, driving is fun, and it makes sense for transportation, like large-scale transportation in the American countryside, because there's so much space here.
Yeah, like intercity, it makes sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense.
Intra-city, no, not so much.
Yeah, not nearly as much. And I think that there's a big movement in our generation that's pro-public transportation. I just wonder how that's going to shake out in the future. I know public transportation is greener, too.
I mean, I'm honestly not too concerned. I think, a lot of first world nations are going through a kind of growing pain right now. And I think it will resolve itself soon enough, perhaps even in our lifetime, where we'll slowly transition away from cars and kind of rebuild American infrastructure. Like, there's already been a lot of work, like you mentioned the East Coast, or there's been a lot of work restructuring things on the East Coast already.
I think I've heard, and I'm not sure where I heard this, but the most walkable city is actually Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon. There's that, yes, and then also I think it's Philadelphia, or Pittsburgh, something in Pennsylvania. They've been working hard to restructure things over there, and so it's definitely possible to kind of roll things back a little bit and take a chill pill with all the car stuff. Because as nice as cars are, it's like there's a point where they're not nice and they're scary, and then you get rush hour, and then you have all that.
Our generation is not getting their licenses at the same degree or scale. Like, obviously, the majority of the people in our generation have gotten their license at 16, but I'm sure you've noticed this in our group of friends.
Yeah.
That more and more people are either getting them later or not getting them at all.
Yeah.
And that's because I think that there is a very understandable fear. So it's like driving represents fear rather than freedom in a world where you can have freedom at your computer. If that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, yeah.
It's like, until you literally need it to get from point A to point B, like in your grand scheme of life, like, do you really, like, if you're spending all your time at home on your computer anyway, why do you need to get a car?
Exactly, yeah. Once I did have a pretty intense fear of driving, not only because of my accident, but just in general, up until I just had to start driving to and from jury every day, right? And so until I had that need for that personal transportation, I didn't really want to drive. But now I'm cool with it, and now I'm like, yeah, I'll do it.
It's necessary, and it's like, there's a part of me, because I honestly have a fear of driving too, but it's like, why be afraid in the moment if you're going to have to drive anyway? Like, there's no alternative.
There's no alternative, yeah.
And that's like, because I am kind of anti-car in a sense. I'm not anti-car like I just want cars to disappear. I'm just anti-car like I feel like we do not have alternative options.
Yeah.
That's what sucks.
Well, and this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Cars, they are meant to solve a problem, and they create all these problems of their own that couldn't have been foreseen. Like, originally I saw this video about it, I thought it was hilarious. Like, a huge problem was horse poop being all over the roads.
Oh, yeah.
In streets and stuff. And then when the car came around, that problem just disappeared, right? But of course, now you have all these problems with cars and crashes and
even in like outside of greenhouse gas emissions, it's like emissions and stuff. Every mode of transportation, commercialized and industrialized, will have its issues. It's not that like driving is the great evil that needs to be vanquished. It's more like, I think pursuing any mode of transportation by itself is flawed. Like, something I think would be really cool. I think it'd be really, really neat if between big cities we had high-speed rail. I think high-speed rail can go something like 200 miles an hour.
It can go pretty fast, yeah.
And like, that would be perfect. Like, through the American Midwest, like through the fucking plains.
No, I would love to see just like a really cool rail ride, maybe a bit slower through like Wyoming or something, like weaving between the mountains and stuff. That'd be really cool.
I know there's Amtrak. There is. You can it's not nearly as big as it used to be, but there is like a public train system that exists in this country. It's just like it's really only in like the Northeast. You could travel from I think you can go from Kansas City to St. Louis, and then from like St. Louis to like up in that area.
I think I saw an advertisement for one recently that was like from Chicago to LA, something like that.
But it's rather slow, and there's not a lot of train availability. You only get so many of them, which is kind of crazy seeing how extensive the rail system is in the United States. But even then, I think like high speed rail cutting through Kansas and Colorado and the Great Plains, you could literally just have a straight line for the majority of it. You could literally just build a straight line.
Just build a straight line.
Or as straight as could be. And then you could turn that trip into a matter of, rather than a matter of 10, 13 hours, you could probably cut that down to 8.
Probably down to 8, maybe even less, like 6.
Yeah, I could see it. It'd be really cool regardless. I also just am a fan of, because I'm a fan of Japanese infrastructure. I think it's pretty cool. Obviously, their circumstances are entirely different geographically, right? They're an island. They're a volcanic island that has that's super mountainous, very coastal. Compared to the United States being this big continental divide with the Midwest in the middle. Interesting though. I like these different perspectives on the way infrastructure can work.
Yeah,
I think infrastructure is cool.
I also think infrastructure is cool, and I think the coolest part about it is it's constantly evolving and changing with new problems coming up, those getting solved, and then the solutions causing new problems, and they're just constantly working on it. And
iteration.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of people, especially climate activists, forget, because I'm all for keeping our planet in good health, of course. But I think where a lot of climate activists go wrong is that they act as though it's we're just now starting to cause all these problems that are horrible for the earth, and we need to roll everything back. I'm like, well, no, not necessarily. It's just growing pains, right? And it doesn't mean we should take our foot off the brake, and we should just not care at all and do whatever we want. But you also have to allow some room for humans to you have to give humans credit for trying to solve problems without realizing they'll create more problems, and then giving them time to solve those problems. So I guess not climate activism, climate alarmism, because people will be like, hey, we're about to die unless we just undo everything. It's like, well, no, it's not a matter of undoing things. It's a matter of doing the proper patchwork to see, okay, we solved these problems, but they created these ones, so now we're going to develop solutions to those.
I'm not very educated on climate science. I know that there's this threshold, this degree point that if we hit, it was going to lead to the melting, a big melting of the ice caps, and that would raise the sea level and all that. I think that climate alarmism is valuable in the sense that having extremist elements in society is always valuable. Extremist elements, if they can gain control, has led to dangerous things, can be dangerous, and I don't necessarily support extremism, but I do think having those perspectives allows a more toned down version of what needs to happen. I think that something that a lot of people in our generation especially, the climate is changing, humans are affecting it, and that we do need to apply the brakes, do these things. But it's not it's something, whenever you're discussing billions of humans, their energy needs, and their industrial history, and the current industrial pipeline, the economy, it's not really something you could just say, okay, I'm the President of the United States, I'm the Congress, we're just going to change this all right now. Fix it all. Because that would just lead to massive disaster immediately. I think a great example of that is I forget what it's called, the Great Leap Forward, I think it was in communist China. So basically, Mao was like, okay, guys, we need to be an industrial power. So you're all going to stop farming, and you're going to start working in manufacturing. So all these peasant farmers were pushed into manufacturing, which did great for their industry. They had a great heavy industry. But then, they literally did not have enough people to farm, or they just didn't have enough food, and they suffered an immense famine. Millions of people died. So with anything, if you want to maintain the good status quo for the people who are enjoying the good status quo, and then bring more people into the good part of it, you need to have maybe not slow, but certainly methodical change.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's like it can't just be okay, guys. No more greenhouse gas, and that's what the government's doing. They have their goal by like 2030, like net zero carbon by 2030 or something like that. I do think that there are tons of loopholes in the system and people who get away with it who shouldn't be, but I think that like people really view it as a zero-sum game when it really isn't. There's so much nuance.
There's so much nuance. Like one thing about like the greenhouse gases is like cows, our agriculture. Those contribute more to global warming than cars do. It's crazy.
I just want to specify this real quick. I thought it was really interesting. I was reading an article about innovation power and how it's going to affect foreign policy power in general, like in the competition between China and the United States. And it discussed one of the greatest revolutions in terms of green energy is going to be artificial meat. Have you heard about that stuff?
Yeah, synthetic meat, yeah.
Like synthetic meat, like not like, veggie burgers or something like that, or like tofu. I'm talking like literally designed in the lab meat that you can eat.
Yeah.
Like you may have heard about the human steaks that they released. Yeah. Yeah, and then they have and this is all just like stuff they're doing to get attention to it. And they had the mammoth meatball.
The mammoth meatball, yeah.
Yeah, that no one was allowed to eat because they didn't know if anyone had allergies to it or not.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was like, I was like, no one's allowed to eat it. What's the point? I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, that makes sense. But beyond that, they're working on beef and chicken, and they're working on trying to develop these protein meat-based foods, like these synthetic foods that won't require the same greenhouse gas emissions to bring into being,
Yeah. Speaking of greenhouse gas emissions, I've always just like wondered. It's like well, I know that there are compounds that have the opposite effect, and I'm just wondering. It's like, are we ever going to get to a point where we just start like intentionally pumping those into the atmosphere? That'd be kind of funny. But although instead of pumping more stuff into the atmosphere, because that'd probably have more side effects later on. Like one thing I've heard is that like genetically modified things, like not just like synthetic meat, but like genetically modified trees and plants and stuff, are super good at capturing carbon. There's like this variety of chestnut tree that's like 100 times more powerful than your average one or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so like planting a few forests of those, like especially in places like China, might have a huge effect, and that'd be really cool.
See, the thing that's really shitty right now in the global situation of climate change is if you look at like a heat map of where most of the carbon emissions are coming from, the truth is that China is dumping the most of them in the atmosphere because they don't have their focus right now is developing their GDP and developing their economy to rival the United States first and foremost. They don't really care about the long-term. They're focused on becoming the eminent superpower first. Like this really stuck with me a while ago. I learned they had a 50-year or 75-year celebration of this end of their war with Japan during World War II, and they had a parade in Beijing, which is like known to be acid rain stuff. And they're like, okay, all factories shut off for a 24-hour period, clear skies, instantly. Totally different environment. They had the parade. Okay, factory's back on. Acid rains return.
Well, see, that's one thing that has always kind of shocked me. like climate change. People make a huge deal about it, and like I think justifiably so in many cases. But if our influence is I say this a lot, but if our influence is powerful enough to have such a big change, I think that's a sign that not only is the climate very tentative. Is a sign that reversing things once we figure it out, if we're methodical about it, won't be as hard as a lot of people make it out to be. And that's my biggest thing about climate like alarmism that kind of baffles me. Is a lot of the time it's all about shut everything down, and if we don't, we're going to die because we're going to make these irreversible effects and impacts and stuff. And there's kind of two sides to that. Because when you think about it, almost everything that we impact the environment with is irreversible. Like even now, it's very easy to have irreversible effects. Much like on my tooth, me putting that retainer on without washing it properly has this irreversible effect of breaking down my enamel. But there are also ways to solve those problems that have irreversible effects. You can't go back to how it was before, but you can still improve it.
I think the issue is that there are a few like touchstones that would lead to suffering. Like, just because certain things are like most things are irreversible in consequence doesn't mean we should just embrace them.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying that.
I get that, but it's a dangerous slope because it's like there is a point in time where the ice caps will melt enough to raise the sea level to flood a number of low-sitting cities.
Yeah,
like the Netherlands.
Yeah,
right. So for people who are really concerned about that, to say, hey, if we don't like slow down before we hit this degree point, these cities are going to be flooded. I think that's a very understandable position to take. I do think that, because here's the thing, most of popular conversation is not dominated by the people actually making the policy decisions.
Yeah.
Is dominated by people who have like either super extreme. They're either like right now the climate change conversation, like on the internet, for example, it feels like it's dominated by people saying we're all gonna die if we don't do this, and it's dominated by people saying, oh yeah, climate change isn't a real thing.
Yeah, it's like those are both like the worst stances to take, I think.
Oh, I think that somewhere it's like you gotta take it. Some maybe not. I lean towards taking action. I don't like. Obviously, I don't think. I think probably that climate change doesn't exist is the worst. Is the worst idea there, but I do think that. So here's the difficult part, right? It's like in America, for example, we had the Paris Climate Accords, and the whole idea was we're all going to be carbon net zero by this point in time. What really sucks is that, as much as I would like to say that most people in this conversation are on the side that we're taking methodical action to combat climate change, the unfortunate truth is there are people out there who, mostly for political gain, are like, yeah, we're going to pull out of the Paris Climate Accords. Why? Because I want to for a political statement. I'm looking at Mr. Donald Trump. Right? Because, like, really, like, why did he pull out of the Paris Climate Accords? Like, what did that... I guess his whole reasoning was, well, China's not doing it. Just because China's not doing it doesn't mean we shouldn't, you know? It's like...
If anything, if China's not doing something, we should do that.
Pretty much. That's like a kid in the playground, or like a little sibling saying, well, Billy didn't brush his teeth. It's like, I don't care if Billy didn't brush his teeth. You need to fucking brush your teeth.
You need to brush your teeth.
Dude, you're really making me want an iced coffee from McDonald's right now.
Oh, good. 99 cents, dude.
What?
Yeah, with the app? Yeah.
What?
You get a large ass coffee for 99 cents with the app.
99 cents?
We're not sponsored, but...
Dude, I am a broke ass person. That's amazing. Wait, is it like a permanent thing, or is it just like a coupon that's out right now?
Ever since I've gotten the app, like, it'll have, because it'll say something like, oh, it expires, like...
Holy shit, I'm downloading the app then.
Yeah, it'll say something like, oh, it expires in July 31st.
I'll get that after climbing.
Or something.
I need to pick up some food anyway. I need to go get...
Dude, yes!
Stuff for dinner.
Such a good deal, dude.
Oh my god,
99 cent large coffee. Yeah.
God.
It's fantastic. Is it as good as, like, say, Mama's, like, Big Mama's
Oh,
coffee?
no,
it's
of
not.
course. But like 99 cents?
Can't go wrong, dude.
Dude, that's like... That's ridiculous. I know it's kind of... It's like... A combo meal costs like $10 there.
It's crazy.
You know? I mean, to be fair, a large drink from them is 99 cents. I think it's stayed that way.
It was
but a large fry is like $4 or something like that.
So with the app, you can get a large fry for $1.
What?
Yeah.
I just want you to... Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, dude.
Do you get like push notifications or something?
Pretty much. Well, actually, no. No, I don't. I only get notifications for, like, you know, oh, here's your order. It went through. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna pull this up now. We're gonna go through this real quick.
No, McDonald's it's a crazy thing.
It is, because like it used to be like, you know, where you go to get a cheap meal, and and now it's just not cheap anymore. It's like it's the same quality, but
yeah, it's the same quality, but it's not cheap and it's not fast.
And it's not depends on where you go and
That's
when
fair.
you go.
Yeah, when you go, but like it used to be that no matter what time of day you went to McDonald's, you were gonna get your food. You know, and I think the major thing right now that McDonald's is suffering is turnover. Like, they just can't keep people, and they're paying really good. Like, they're paying a competitive part-time wage.
I was kind of sad because, like, right after I left, making like 11 an hour as a crew trainer, they started paying people like 13, 14 an hour, like just right at the gate, and I was like, I'm so glad that, you know, I quit so I could like sell my game and stuff and work on that, but so sad. You know, fast food is weird. Like in general, because it's like all the chains communicate so much with like the kinds of things they add to their menu. Like, you know, chicken sandwiches. You know, there's a whole chicken sandwich war between Popeyes and Chick-fil-A. That's just kind of like a meme. And now almost every fast food restaurant you go to has their own chicken sandwich.
Yeah, I mean, it's been that way for a while though. I think it goes after McDonald's out of theirs. You know.
Yeah, look at that. 99 cent any size premium roast or iced coffee. Fantastic deal.
Why would you get a not large for that deal?
I don't know exactly. There's a time last semester when I switched from larges to mediums, just because I'm like, well, yeah, it's more value if I get the large, but I don't want to have all that sugar every day. But now that I exercise, I get a lot.
Yeah, I can justify it. Well, dude, I will be honest. Like, I like black coffee. I love the taste of it. And McDonald's coffee is actually like not the best, but something I really like about their coffee is that like it is like scalding, like it's like liquid magma. Like I've heard people have gotten like burned serving it before.
Yeah, there's a whole lawsuit a while back where this old lady dumped it on her crotch and like got really messed up, had to go to the hospital, huge bills, sued McDonald's for $1 million. It's kind of crazy, and I think she won too.
No, I know she did win.
Yeah,
because I will say this, like, it'll work for like. There's the reason most people don't serve their coffee that hot, and that's because shit like that happens.
Yeah.
I think the reason McDonald's does it is twofold. One, if you keep it really, really hot, it hides the shitty flavor.
There you go. Yeah,
No, like legit.
it does.
And two, if you keep it really, really hot, you risk like it's like every customer is going to be happy with the heat level because they can just wait for it to settle. Beyond that, I don't know why they keep it so hot.
Well, they also might keep it hot just because it gives off the impression that it's fresher.
That's probably part of it. But they probably make one big pot a day, maybe two if it's a busy.
A lot more.
Really?
When I worked there, like
I thought I pictured it as like these big pots. Is it like a normal sized pot?
It's a normal sized pot.
Oh, okay.
For iced coffee, they put them in like the large tins that like they put sweet tea in.
Oh,
for
okay,
example.
yeah. That's what I was picturing the large coffee would be in.
Okay, yeah, no. I mean that's not a bad idea, but considering those containers are made out of metal, you couldn't carry them around safely. So
Yeah, then somebody would touch it and die.
yeah, so no. You just do the normal pots for the coffee, but yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like the breakfast shift. Whenever I worked at McDonald's, breakfast shift was like always the busiest. But it was also when we worked the fastest because while there were more people coming through for the breakfast shift, I feel like it's easier to prepare the breakfast food than it is the dinner
Oh
food.
yeah, I mean like it feels like a lot like a burger has like especially how many burgers McDonald's has nowadays. It just has a lot more going into it. It feels, whereas with the McMuffins and with the biscuits, it's just like biscuit, egg, sausage, or biscuit, egg, bacon.
Yeah, it's like the same like 5 ingredients, just like arranged in different combinations and stuff.
And I'm sure you just have a big old thing of the eggs for the burritos.
So yeah, for the burritos, there's actually like we get them in a full mix, and like you dish out the mix into a tortilla. And with burritos, usually you'd make a lot at once, and just put them in like a thing to keep them warm. Everything else though is made on the spot. A lot of people have they have this idea that it's like, oh no, McDonald's they'll just make a ton of sandwiches and then just like store them and then hand them out as people come through. No, every sandwich is made when it's ordered, because you can't predict what people are gonna want.
Yeah.
Because what happens if you make like 15 sausage biscuits and everyone comes through wanting like a sausage egg McMuffin or something like that?
Your bone.
Yeah.
So the customers get a lot. The employees, I should say, get a lot of free food coming home.
Speaking of free, okay, it would be awesome whenever you would expect like when a customer comes through and changes their order after like people started making it. That would suck. No. Because, well, yeah, it's a little bit frustrating for the manager to go back in and change the order and stuff and enter the code and whatnot. For the customers, they get free food. Not the customers, for the
employees.
For the employees, they get free food. Now, sometimes we would be nice and we'd hand it to someone else. Like, hey, have a nice day. But if one of us was hungry or if one of us was thirsty, and like we just made like the best looking caramel frappe, like we're gonna take that to the back and keep it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's one of the benefits of the job, and I think that all jobs you have to have something that you get for being an insider to make it worth it, especially part-time gigs.
Especially in the service industry.
Oh, yes.
Especially.
Yes. That's one of the big things I think they can keep people. I think that because, especially in fast food, in the service industry, people are just not nice.
They're not.
Most of the time, it's like, dude, you're getting a McDouble, you're getting a single McDouble and a small fry. Like, you are not high class. Like, I made a mistake, but I'm
16.
I'm like 16, dude. It's like, calm down. I know your marriage isn't going well and your kids hate you or whatever, but don't take that out on me.
Yeah, like the levels of entitlement can get really high in the McDonald's drive-thru. And again, it's like you said, it's very ironic. Like, you're going to McDonald's. You're not going to Flame. You're not going to a nice steakhouse. You're not sitting in the king's court getting some
hell,
food catered to you.
even then, if you're at a nice restaurant, I don't think you're entitled to be an asshole.
Well, yeah, that's weird. It's like there's like this weird like reverse psychology going on here, where it's like, you know, when you get cheap stuff, you feel really entitled and real snooty, and when you go to an expensive restaurant, you kind of feel like, oh, you get like an imposter syndrome almost.
Especially you have to be, like, you have to respect the food and the people.
Yeah,
you know. I think that nicer restaurants do that on purpose. I do think all restaurants attract assholes, you know, who will be snooty, who will complain, who will send food back, who will try and play you. Like, but I just go to a restaurant, I eat the food. Unless the food is genuinely atrocious, I'm usually happy with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, I'm not a picky person. Like, I don't go out to eat unless I know I can afford to eat. So I'm not going out to eat, like, if I'm on my last dime and I need to make sure I get every morsel of food that I can, or, you know, make sure that every single bit of ice was properly portioned in my Starbucks coffee. It's crazy.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. I am really glad I worked at McDonald's. I fully believe everyone should work in the service industry just a little bit. Yes. Because much like, you know, when we're all young kids going to school, we were kind of forced to learn to be civil with one another, like on top of, like, you know, having the classwork. Work in the service industry kind of forces you to learn how to deal with people who don't want to deal with you. That's a big thing. Like, a lot of people, when they go through McDonald's, I think the reason they get so entitled and stuff is because they've had a long day, they're done with work, or their kids were whining for a Happy Meal or something, and so they don't see McDonald's as a special treat or special occasion. They see McDonald's as, you know, a sort of last resort, or as just like a something that needs to be quick and easy, a chore, and so they already don't really want to be there usually when they go there. Or if they do want to be there, they don't think much of it. And so if anything goes wrong, they get upset because they're like, well, I already don't want to be here, or I already have low expectations. And even those low expectations are being undermined by these workers who don't know what they're doing. And a lot of the time, what's unfortunate about McDonald's is that everyone can know what they're doing, but if just the wrong combination of orders comes through, we just get totally blocked up. And then it's just like that for an hour or two. Because it's kind of like a domino effect, where if just one part of the process has a hiccup or something, like if we suddenly find out a batch of food like expired or something, like midway through cooking it, or if we find out like, oh hey, we ran out of chicken nuggets in the back or something like that, you know, just that one little hiccup can just send a cascade of, like, you know, long waits for customers where they're just sitting there for like 10 minutes to get through a drive-through. And that makes the worker super stressed out, and then of course that makes the customer stressed out, which makes the workers even more stressed out. And like, but learning to deal with that, learning to just roll with the punches is valuable for a lot of things in life.
It very is.
Like one thing I'll compare it to is, you know, after the reason I left McDonald's was so I could sell my game and work on that. And then I'm pretty much done with that, and I'm moving on to more stuff, especially over the summer. Since I'm going to have more time to myself, I'm going to work on some more projects using what I've learned in my classes so far. But I came across this one video that was like ranking all the Backrooms games on Steam, since there are like 40 of them at this point. When I released mine, there were like 3, maybe 2, and mine was the only one that was more than like a tech demo.
Yeah.
So it was kind of crazy how times have changed. But anyway, you know, I had my game, and the person playing the game, like, they were kind of hard on it. They're like, well, I don't mind the graphics, but like, it's kind of boring. The gameplay loop is the same. It's like, I get that, like, the Backrooms are supposed to be infinite, but like, if you're making a game out of it, it should at least be a little bit more entertaining, and the levels don't have much to them, and like, that kind of hurt, because like, I worked hard on this stuff, and I get like the gameplay loop can be boring, but that's by design, and I intentionally throw in a lot of elements to kind of spice up that loop, because I think a lot of great games have like a very consistent gameplay loop, but with a lot of like modifications and variables that make the loop more of like a windy kind of road that still is a loop, but it has all these unique twists and turns as you're going through it. Kind of like Minecraft, for example, right? Like, you know, going mining in Minecraft, it's pretty much the same thing. You're just clicking blocks and going through caves. Yeah, exactly. But like finding new resources or finding a cave or having to fight monsters, like, those are things that add to the core loop. And so I try to structure my game that way. And a lot of people appreciate that. This person didn't. But I left a comment, and I was like, hey, first of all, thanks for playing my game at all, but also thanks for the criticism. I agree. The gameplay loop can get frustrating, and even though that was by design, you should by no means, you know, feel obligated to enjoy it when I intentionally made it to be repetitive and monotonous. And, I tried this, and these were some of the things. And so I just kind of spent a little bit of time explaining the design process and things I struggled with and areas where I can grow as a game developer. And because I posted that comment and was, instead of responding to the criticism in a harsh way, I responded to it in a kind of a very civil, very supportive. I was supporting the criticism. I was supporting the act of looking at this game objectively and agreeing with them on their points. And I was basically submitting to them in a way, right? Much like I would submit to the customers at McDonald's. There was a very positive response. First of all, the creator of the video pinned that comment, and lots of people have been leaving me a reply saying, "Hey, dude, you're awesome for being so humble about this, and you're actually making me want to play your game and give it a try just because I want to support you." They were wishing me good luck in college because I mentioned how I'm going through college to get better at game development, and the outcry was just so immense and positive, and I loved it, and it warmed my heart because they don't really care about the product. After I left .com, they care about the person behind it because I gave them a reason to care about it. And I think the same thing is that what you learn in the service industry is that there's always room to show that you care about someone, and even if they don't show it to you immediately, they will appreciate it.
Oh, for sure. A lot of people at Men's Warehouse, they think that we're on commission because our company used to be, and we still have a very similar model to that. There are salesmen on the floor. Whenever you walk in, they introduce you, and they kind of walk you through the whole process. They get you fitted, and that's what I do. And I've had so many customers who are debating whether or not they're going to stay, and they're like, I'd hate to do this to you. Are you on commission? And I'll tell them, no, I'm not. And they're genuinely surprised because I have been giving them that quality of service, and I've just tried my best to treat everybody who needs help just like that, like they need help first and foremost, and work with them through the entire thing. And a lot of people genuinely really appreciate that. I one time had a guy who I told I didn't make commission. I think he was a bit better off. And I walked him through the whole process. I got him and his son a suit and the various clothes, got him fitted for a dance. And he, I get him a suit, I press it out for him, detagged it, and I walk it up to him. I'm like, "Hey, have a wonderful day." I shake his hand. I feel a bill in my hand, which is not uncommon. You get tipped on the occasion. I'm like, "Oh, okay, nice." I put it in my pocket because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to look at it. I'm like, "Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day." I walk back to the back. Well, it was $100. $100. It was a $100 bill. It was a Benjamin Franklin looking me in my eye. My first thought was like, "Oh my god, he gave me the wrong bill." But he was already gone, and he didn't come back. Right? So I'm like, okay, fuck. I guess I did do a good job then. I put it away, and I'm like, I'm gonna keep doing that. Just gonna keep doing it, and not even for the reward, but just knowing that it does matter to people. Just keep that in the future. And going into a store like that, I'm never going to be the asshole, who gets there right before close but demands the world.
I think, when you get that money like that, you don't appreciate it for the monetary value. You appreciate it because if they're willing to give you that much just for showing them good service, it says a lot.
Yeah, it does. It's like they really appreciate it.
Yeah, there's this one really nice, I think I've told this story on this podcast before, I'll say it again. This one really nice Asian mother and her son, cute son. They would always come through on Sundays and stuff, and they would see me a lot because they usually come around the same time. And one day when we were really, really busy, I was getting stressed out, and I was trying to help them and get their food, and I gave them the wrong food, so I had to run back in and get the right food, and I was not having it. But I was trying to keep, a good face and smile and, not let it get to me. And then right before I was about to rush back inside after handing her her food, she said, "Hey, wait." She handed me an envelope that said "thank you" on it with a little smiley face. I was like, "Oh, thank you." And I took it back. And then at the end of my shift, I peeked. There's $50 in there for a McDonald's worker.
Yeah, this is crazy. That just doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen. And then I got home. I checked again. There was actually $70 in there. And I just started breaking. I just broke down and started crying, right in front of my dad, because at the time he would take me to and from work. And I was like, what did I do to deserve this? And looking back on it, what did I do to deserve this? Well, it wasn't necessarily just that attitude with that lady, but building the character to have that sort of that attitude of service was very valuable. And as a Christian, the Bible, especially in the gospel, Jesus talks a lot about serving people, and it talks a lot about how those who serve will be served, those who wish to lead must submit themselves to everyone, which makes a lot of sense. because I think one of the biggest problems with politics today is like we have all these people who say they're good at leading, and yet they don't really seem to serve anyone except for themselves. We don't have people of service in our public institutions and offices. We just have people of self-service. Oftentimes, and even if it's not themselves, they're kind of serving this greater agenda without truly wanting to serve America as a whole.
Or even then, they serve America as a concept, but not America as a people.
Exactly.
A citizenry. I entirely agree. I think, especially for career politicians, because Joe Biden was a senator before he was vice president.
Yeah. It was Delaware, or where was he a senator?
I think it was like Delaware. I forget where exactly, but it was for like 60, 50 years, it felt like.
It was a lot.
So whenever he first got into office, he was the youngest senator ever. Isn't that weird?
And now he's the oldest president ever. Dang.
Isn't that weird? Isn't that a weird? Like, and he was like, I remember watching an interview with him, and he was a politician for sure, but he was young and fresh faced and well spoken and passionate, and I think that you lose sight of what you were there to do whenever you've been in there for so long.
Well, it makes sense because you're sitting in the stuffy building with all these other people, and you're just saying yay or nay to things all day, and you're just kind of talking about stuff all day and going to the press meetings and stuff like that, and it's just like
it becomes a game.
It becomes a game, exactly.
Mm-hmm. It becomes a game where like the only goal is to get reelected because you have to be reelected if you're going to do your job, right? And it's just a secular thing. There's a reason that every presidential administration does the most stuff, good or bad, whenever it's their second term, right? Because
they can't get reelected,
so they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah,
they just balls to the wall, try and do the best possible policy they can.
And that's why I think term limits need to be a thing in Congress.
100%. And basically everyone I talk to agrees. That's probably one of like the most popular, simple policy changes. Period. And it makes sense.
It does make so much sense.
It really does. It's like you could argue that there is a skill to legislating, there's a skill to policy making, but at the end of the day, most of the policy in Congress is written by a very skilled class of unseen professionals. The actual legislators serve as mouthpieces for those professionals, right? More so than anything. They just approve or disapprove of what those people put together. You do need to have expertise. But more than anything, you need to not lose sight of what you're there to do, which is to represent your citizenry.
Exactly.
To represent the people that elected you to be there.
And when you spend so much time not immersed in those citizens, how are you supposed to keep sight of that?
Yeah. Like, you're obviously just going to... Like, Washington is a pit. Capitals often turn into pits of like vipers and stuff. It's just like one of the most the oldest literary terms. It's just like power corrupts, and a nest of power like that corrupts absolutely. I think
it was very unfortunate. How's your week, John?
It's pretty good. I'm really tired because we had to go to sleep late and wake up early for that dog over there because she can go about 6 hours straight if you pull her water at night without like going. But like even then, if you sleep too much in past 6 o'clock, then from 12 to 6, I should say, then she's gonna pee on the floor. So it's like we've been going to sleep at 12, waking up at 6, going back to sleep sometimes. But like after you wake up, going back to sleep isn't good rest.
Yeah.
So I've just been real tired. It's not been a bad week at all. I've had plenty of time to think. It's been nice and refreshing to be away from the family. It makes you appreciate the family more.
It does.
Makes you appreciate your room and stuff more. But I'm just like exhausted. I'm ready to go back to my normal schedule, get to climbing normally again. I'm excited for the summer to roll around.
I'm so excited for the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be doing summer school. I'm going to be trying to work pretty much full time. But like even then, I'm still excited for it because I will still have like. It's weird because for me, it's not even a matter of the amount of hours I'm doing a thing. It's like the amount of commitments I have. So right now I'm juggling 3 commitments. I'm juggling Men's Warehouse, substitute teaching, school, and then social life on top of that. And those are all different things, and family life. And those are all different things I have to plug into my schedule at different times. And it's been really, really hard to balance.
Yeah. No offense to you. I've been concerned about you lately because I've realized that you've been struggling to balance things and plug things in your schedule and stuff. You've actually kind of inspired me, though. So I've switched to the Interactive Design and Aesthetics certificate over at Drury. And almost all I went to their Fusion Day event recently, which is where seniors were showing off a lot of their capstone projects and explaining their certificates. And in interactive design and aesthetics, it's essentially like app design and user interface design. Come up with an idea for a cool thing that people can use, which is right up my alley. And you have inspired what might become my senior project for that certificate, which would be, it's essentially a planner app where you can join different groups and then you can suggest activities for that group while seeing everyone's planner at the same time. So that way you don't have to go to each person and ask, hey, are you free this day, this time, this day, this time, for everyone. You can just add an activity to a group and say, hey, I see that most of you, if not all of you, are free at this time. Because I can see that on your planner, like that part's not blocked off in red or whatever. So you guys want to do this? And then everyone can say like yay or nay or something, so everyone knows who's going to show up and stuff. And like,
I like that idea quite a bit.
Because like someone came up to me and was like, well, that sounds like Google Calendar, because I was talking about this on Fusion Day. I was like, well, yeah, but no one uses Google Calendar because it sucks.
The biggest thing for me is, it's like, I think the biggest struggle of juggling all these things, and I think for most people at this time in their life, is finding not just time to rest, but time to have restful rest.
Restful rest.
It's like finding time that you meaningfully can actually decompress and relax and recharge. Because something I've noticed is that whenever you have such a fractious schedule, it's very easy to have a day off here or time off here to yourself. But whenever you only have it every so often and not on a schedule, it's like the first day of every weekend is like, all your nervous energy from the week is slowly winding down.
So you only have like one real day of rest.
One real day of just like, because like the only real time I feel I'm resting on the weekend is whenever I don't have something the next day, right? Exactly. Whenever you have like a Tuesday and then Thursday off, it's like, yeah, you have Tuesday and Thursday off. You have 2 days off a week, but you have something going on the next day.
Yeah.
You can't sleep in. You can't stay up late. You can't just do whatever you want. You have a commitment that you have to uphold, and it's always on your mind.
You feel more rested the night before than you do the day you actually have off.
The one, I think that app is an amazing idea. I think the one thing people have, and this is just a personal thing that people have to uphold, it's like you really got to be willing just to tell people, hey man, I can't do this because I'm fucking tired.
That is something that I think is undervalued.
It's such a bummer to say that and to start saying that more, but it's like, it's just the truth.
It is the truth.
If I'm not going to bring myself, my authentic, well-rested self, then it's not really worth it.
It's not worth it. It's great. And that's something I've had to learn recently about myself. Because especially like last 2 years of my life, I've tried to engage with people a lot more, and I've loved it. But that's also taught me the value of just resting and being on my own and not committing myself to hang out with other people. Just because, like you just said, hanging out with other people is only valuable if you, the real rested, authentic you, is the one hanging out.
That you want to be there and you're not there out of some sort of commitment.
Yeah.
Like, there is something to be said that, especially for things like exercise, it's like, you're not always going to want to go. Like, you need to just be disciplined and do it. But, like, it's not really worth... And there can be... Okay, so it's like, hanging out with people doesn't have to be, like, this big ordeal. And I think that's something our generation does rather well. It can just be a relaxed sort of thing. But it's not... It shouldn't be something that... It can't replace whatever you personally do to regenerate.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, it does. Because, like, I'll often find myself, like, trying to plan out a week. I'll look at it, I'm like, it's so full. What am I going to do? And then, like, I get stressed out, doing all those activities, and then I don't enjoy them as much.
Exactly. It's like it's like there's a reason adults function the way they do, right? Where they're like, it's like, why don't you ever want to do anything? It's because, well, I don't want to. And now I do think that there is maybe not something wrong with doing nothing. I think people have a responsibility to do things.
They do, of course.
Right, and I think there is, especially for certain types of people, like I'm more introverted, I'd say in certain aspects, and I think that there are certain people who do have to force themselves out. Like, I'll say there's times where I'm like, oh, fuck, I have to go do something today. And I'll get out and do it, and I'll be fine and happy while I'm doing it. But it's just like, it's just weird mental block.
Yeah, willing it in up front is pretty hard sometimes.
Yes.
Even as a more extroverted person, like, I'll be like this morning, I got out of bed and I was like, I gotta do a podcast with John? I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. Do I really have to do that?
Yeah, it's exactly whenever you wake up in the morning and you're tired and you haven't gotten your morning coffee and you're like, I just want to fucking do nothing. And sometimes you have to listen to yourself and then do nothing. But most of the time, you really just gotta be like, tying your shoes, all frustrated.
And I think like a valuable lesson I learned, especially when I was working on my game, was just like your willpower is limited. It's like a well that you can draw from, and
it's not infinite.
You gotta give it time to fill back up. Otherwise, you're not going to be very productive at all. And so it's like sometimes the most productive thing to do is to rest,
which is a very weird headspace to get into in a culture that's based around productivity.
It very much is.
And it's not. And once again, it's not an inherently bad thing. It's just like with all things, it's always bad in excess.
Yeah.
And I think that we're not really taught, like, self-care in that sense. Like, we're not really taught, okay, make sure that you plan a day off for yourself or for what you want to do in your schedule. Because even, like, I've noticed I'm doing this myself today. I'm like, okay, I have that day off. That means it's homework time. And that's what I'm looking about, and to go full circle, like, that's what I'm looking about in the summer, because I do take a couple summer classes to close out my associates. But they're going to be online. So it's like, I'll have so much more flexibility on doing it. And I'll make sure to plan, like, you know what? Thursday is video game day. I'm going to stay at home and play video games. And why am I going to do that? Because I want to.
Well, yeah, no, last night, for the first time in a long time, I booted up my computer, sat down, just played some games on my Steam library. Chilled with a friend in VC till like midnight. And I was getting done brushing my teeth, getting ready to go to bed. And I thought to myself, why don't I do that anymore?
I know, it's like why don't I hop in a Discord call with people anymore? It's because, and not even just that, but like just like that kind of like I remember in high school, there would be, every day after school I'd hop on Discord, I'd play video games till I went to bed, not do my homework because I didn't have to because it was easy, right? And that's not a way to live life, but it is still something that if you enjoy, you should incorporate into your life. So it's like, why don't you do it anymore? And it's because, well, for one, whenever you're going to the same school, having the same classes with all your friends, then you know exactly how much time they have, that they will be on whenever you get off of school. But two, I think people really, like, underestimate how nice it is just to have that really consistent school schedule. You're at school 5 days a week, 2 days a week, guaranteed, 3-day weekends sometimes, breaks sometimes. They're coming, you can always work towards them. Whereas, especially in part-time work, it's like, every week is different.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. And like it was weird because when I worked for myself and I was just working on my game and stuff, it's like, even though like when I worked on it was completely in my hands, I didn't feel free while I was working on it. I felt like I had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had to dedicate time to it and will myself into doing it. And some days I would hate that. I'd be like, I don't want to do this. And so I wouldn't get anything done. I would just have like the code sitting on my screen and I'd stare at it and like go click through some YouTube videos and go back to the code and then not do anything. And like, right? Mm-hmm. And then other days I'd be so much more productive because I would actually want to do it because I spent enough time not doing it.
Discipline is, like, willpower has two sides. I think there's passion and discipline.
Yes.
And whenever passion fails, discipline is there to keep you going. I think discipline, though, is always less productive than passion, but that's okay.
It is okay.
Right? It's like discipline is there to ensure the habit remains. It's like, I'm willing to learn Japanese, but I've been so busy as of late that I've not been really focusing it, but I've been doing Duolingo at least once a day. And it's not much. It's like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's something, though, yeah.
It's something. It's progress, and progress begets progress, and eventually I'll get to the point where it's like, I am ready, maybe whenever I go to Missouri State, because I think I am going there. They have a Japanese department there. Take Japanese lessons. Or maybe I'll take private lessons from somebody outside, just in town or something on the internet. Listen, Randy has the same reaction, and it's just, I know, it sucks, but it works out better for my little finances. It's so sad.
Drury do eat up those finances. It do.
Not all of us put like 1,000 hours.
Don't mention the game. Don't.
No, it's just like, no. I'm not even saying like the game. I'm saying you worked like a full-time job for the entirety of COVID. I mean, pretty much. Like if you think about the breakdown of hours, right?
Yeah. fair, but I don't know. Man, it's sad to hear, but we're still gonna be in town. You're not gonna go anywhere.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah,
And hopefully, my hope is the only reason I'm working so much right now. I have. Oh,
sure. Thank you.
I'm going on a trip to Japan in about a year's time. Fairly expensive. It's like $5,000. I need to save up for it. You know, most of that's a flight. It's like $2,000 for the flight.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You know, because it's like an entire 30-hour span of flying. I think, especially since we're flying out from Springfield, probably going from Springfield to Denver, from Denver probably like to LAX, from LAX to over. I think it's from LAX over.
That would make sense. Yeah.
If it's not LAX over, it's LAX to like Hawaii. It's like halfway through the Pacific, or maybe like a third. But anyway, expensive. I hope, though, that since my loans will be able to cover my tuition from Missouri, that I can just work less in my second 2 years and like work just like 15 hours a week and not just like be dead,
Yeah. I haven't really been blessed by that game because I haven't really been working on it like all year.
I hesitate to say blessed. You worked for that.
I did. Well, and that's something that I have to consider about like the other people who made those backwards games, because it's so easy to look at them and be like, they were just hopping on the trend. They didn't work as hard as I did. Blah 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 blah. Up front, no, they didn't work as hard as I did on that game. But the only reason they were able to make a game like that with such quality so fast is because they had a lot of game development experience. Even if they were using a game engine, it's like you still have to put a lot of work into that. And so it's like, this game was the first game I ever made, and I made it with very limited.
It was educational as much as it was game development.
Yes,
right?
Yes, it was very educational for me.
It's like they already had the roads built. Roads make traveling much quicker.
They do.
You were building the infrastructure as you were making it.
Yes, like I was leveling out like the mountains and stuff, and cutting through them and making the tunnels and putting up the lights so people could see, and the railing or whatever.
But you gained a lot of really valuable experience from it.
No, I did, and like that coupled with what I've been learning at school. One thing I was scared of is that I would get to jury and not learn much of anything. Already not the case. There was that thing I was showing you the other day where it's like I made a sphere out of triangles and stuff, and like it's not just like the concepts I've been learning in school. It's also like the way of thinking about it and the way of approaching problems that's changed fundamentally in just the first year. I still got 3 more years of cool stuff to learn and to do and stuff. And like I'll be spending the summer learning how to use Godot, and I'm really excited for that. And there's so much value in learning how to do something that money can't really exemplify. And that's just the thing about education in general. It's like so many people look at it like as a very direct and practical way to get money. And I'm like, it's not just about that though. There's so much more to it.
It's very much. I think the best thing you can do is find a career where you enjoy the process of learning more about that career.
Yes, and that's what like my mentor Robin, who works for Valve, always tells me. It's like don't get to a state where like you enjoy making a certain specific game. Get to a state where you can enjoy the process of game making, no matter what project you're working on.
Yeah, very much so. That's kind of like one of the reasons I moved away from education. It felt to me like I was pursuing it purely for the practical rather than... Because in a sense, I told myself, I'm pursuing education to give myself time to do the other things I want, but it's like, is that fair to the students? It's like, no. And one of the major things that changed my mind is like I went into substitute teaching really for like you don't really get a grasp of what it's like to teach a classroom, but you get a grasp of the other type of people that are in the district. And it's like there are tons of wonderful people, and there are tons of average people, and tons of bad people. But fundamentally, all the good ones who are there are there because they love it and they really want to be. I wonder who's calling me. Nevada. We're gonna let it ring.
I think something happened in Vegas that you're not telling me about.
Apparently. I've never been called by a Nevada number. Have I contacted anyone recently? Like maybe like a company or something? It's not verified. Usually a company will be verified.
Usually. It's something secret though. Oh yeah, in the group chat. So, we are an hour.
Okay.
But we can keep talking for just a little bit longer, so we don't have to cut it off so abruptly with a random Nevada call.
I don't. It's like listen. My policy is if they don't leave a voicemail, they don't matter.
Yeah.
Like usually, if it's not verified, and it's a number I don't know, I'll let it ring, and then if they leave a voicemail, you get a call back from the job. Otherwise, dust it. Also, text me if you actually care.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
That's one thing that baffles me, especially about, like, older generations. They love calling. I'm like, you can send text.
Because, like, oftentimes calls, they involve all these, polite, what's the word for formalities? They involve all these, platitudes and stuff. It's like, oh, how was your day? But, like, it's something that would take, like, 5 words in a text. You know? Yeah. It's like the whole, I've heard in the corporate culture, it's like, why do we have a meeting if you could have just sent an email thing? It's like, why are we doing this? It's because I think people
for the company culture.
Yeah. Listen, company culture does exist, but in most corporate scenarios, if it's not a creative based company or a company like a nonprofit where it's like there's a goal, most people are literally there for money, and that's the point of the company.
Yeah.
Right? Like trying to develop a company culture is just like, dude, we sell auto parts, like, and no one here likes cars. You know what I mean?
It's great.
It's just like everyone buys. It's like somebody's selling a lie they don't believe, and you have to also pretend you're buying the lie.
It's so funny, dude. But money's pretty cool.
Money is very cool. It's very cool. It lets you travel. Lets you buy cool stuff.
See, that's the thing. Like, you know,
cool food.
Yeah, money don't buy happiness, but money make happiness easier.
Oh, okay. Like, but you can't have, like, in our society, you can't have happiness without money. Maybe you could, but in the traditional sense, you couldn't.
Yeah.
It's like unless you want to live the life of an ascetic monk.
Yeah.
Skeptic.
It's not a monkey man.
Monkey man. Monkey man.
Monkey man.
What do you think? Beard or no beard for me?
For you, I'd say give it. I think your face needs a little bit more time to mature, but it would look fantastic with the beard. So give it a couple years.
See, the thing is, I think I have a jawline, right? The facial hair does accentuate a little bit. I also think it's like and of course, you know, you look at yourself a lot, so like you're most critical. But it's like whenever I shave, I feel like I de-age by like 10 years.
Oh yeah, no, totally. I was looking in the mirror this morning. I was like, dang, I need to shave. I was like, but do I need to shave?
Honestly, if you want to try growing it out for a little bit, just make sure you like shave the line beneath.
Yeah, I don't want to be a predator. Don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to have just the whole neck beard.
That Discord mod neck beard. Yeah,
yeah.
Don't want that.
Yeah, just get a little bowler hat, a little fedora, you pop on there.
Actually, I can't look that part because I work out, so I can't.
You know, you can be.
I don't have like the facial
You can
structure.
be a neck beard and work out.
No, I mean like I won't have like the chubby cheeks I need, like fully say that. I won't have like the triple chin. No, well,
you know, you don't need that though. You just need the spirit. You know?
The spirit. You gotta will it.
You just gotta be.
Yeah, you gotta unlock your chi.
You gotta really speak nasally. You know, you gotta be like,
Hang on, it's me.
that's really good.
It's me, Discord, Discord Legend 62. Today we'll be rating my 14-year-old anime crushes. Don't worry though, they only look like they're 14. They're 7,000 years old. So don't worry. This is one of my favorite lolly.
Okay, I'm gonna stop.
No, like, but people like that actually like exist.
Yeah, it's crazy,
you know,
dude.
I know some people who'd get mad at me for saying this, but like anime fan service, I just can't. I can't stand it.
You can't stand it.
I cannot. Are you able to pull out like a quote of your philosophy book that's like anime fan service?
You're not.
Bad.
You're not ready for this. You are not. You are not.
Like 40 years ago, he's like anime is cringe.
You're not ready for this. Okay, here we go. Consider sex robots. Consider sex robots that look like children. Is this okay?
I mean, a very interesting question. You know, a very interesting question.
I was sitting with a friend and I was reading this and then I got to that and I lost it. I broke down. We were like sitting eating lunch and I just broke down and I showed it to him. Then he broke down. It's just like, I paid like $80 for this book. I'm reading it for a college philosophy. Well,
$80?
For this book plus another, so maybe more like $40 or something.
But even then, damn. Here, I'm gonna blow your mind real quick. We're gonna keep recording too.
I'm gonna keep recording. Okay.
All right, we're gonna go to.
I also won anyway.
Have you ever heard of thrift books?
No, I've not.
So they're.
Oh, there's no internet.
Ah, shit! I'll pull up on my phone.
Yeah, I showed
There's
you
an online
Yeah.
used bookstore called Thrift Books, where you can get used books in good quality. Also, the Friends of the Library book sale's going on right now.
Actually, that kind of makes sense because end of the school year and whatnot.
What's the title?
Causation in Psychology by John Campbell.
Causation in Wait, no, wait, spelled wrong.
Psychology. Well, and the crazy thing is, it's like, even with more context, that
Damn.
line just comes out of nowhere.
Still like $40.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive. Well, it's pretty new, too. It's like published in
Oh, is it a new
2020.
book?
Published in 2020 or something, yeah.
Okay, I thought it was like a reprint of an older book.
Oh, no. And so, the reason that came up is because it was a question of, like, ethics with robots. Is like, how...
It's a question that like is very much like of real consequence right now. I'd say.
Well, yeah. And like, so the argument he goes into is like, well, one side could argue, having child sex robots will just bring out the desires of pedophiles more and make them more pronounced and make them worse. But another side of the argument say, well, it would give them an outlet for those desires so they didn't have to take them out on real children, and so in the end it'd be ethical. So it's like, what's worse, is it better to kind of feed the beast and satiate the beast with something artificial as opposed to something real? Or is that just going to encourage more of the bad activity because, having that outlet for desire will just make the desire stronger. So it's like, it could go both ways.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
It's messed up to think about, but... Okay, he was talking about like sex robots. Like, what if you could just instantly have that sexual gratification that you want? We already have that. Like, pornography is basically that. It is an artificial release of sexual tension. We already have that. Like, you don't have the physical component, but like,
I get what
we have implements that can take care of that part of it, and so it's like, and we talked about this in our class yesterday. It's more about attacking the idea than it is any specific, manifestation of the idea, whether that be a sex robot or pornography online. It's like, we gotta attack the idea that, these desires are just something that should be instantly satiated. Just like with a kid, like you're not gonna, give them candy every time they want candy. It's bad for them. Develops a bad habit. And the same thing goes for sexual desire. You shouldn't just instantly, gratify that. You have to learn to control it and resist it. Because if you just always gratify it, well, you're going to get worse and worse. Your dopamine is going to get completely out of whack.
It's interesting. So, I think pornography is a very hot button issue, and always has been in this country. But I think as of late, it's like, especially in our generation, especially with the OnlyFans stuff, it's entered into a phase of, like, I almost call it radical acceptance. It's like everything's okay. Don't talk about it. Everything. Don't disparage anyone for doing whatever they want. And I think there actually is a value in that, because I think that what a lot of people do whenever it comes to disparaging others for their sexual habits, it mostly comes down to a repression on their own part, I think. And it's like, I think a lot of people repress themselves and do it to others. I do understand what you're saying, though, in the context that developing this habit of always being gratified can lead to that culture. But I think of a study I read, because I was looking up the no-fap movement. I was like, what the fuck is the no-fap movement? I was like, why does it, like, is there any scientific basis for what they're saying? And not really. The study showed, and it was an observational study, or it was a survey study, so it wasn't actually like a research project or an experiment. But it basically was like correlating pornography and satisfaction in sexual life. And people who watch pornography were much more satisfied in their sexual lives than people who are not.
Interesting.
And I think a large part of that is whenever people who don't partake in pornography more often than not are correlated with not just anti-pornography but abstinence-based groups, right? There is a gray area in the middle, but usually there's a large section of like abstinence meat. It's like what takes up the majority of the non-pornography movement. And I think that if your only experience from sex is basically nothing until you actually do eventually have it, it can lead to very misinformed. Like, pornography is a double-edged sword, because for a lot of people it's educational and allows you to understand how it works and allows you to like actually be beneficial for you and your partner. But often also leads to unrealistic expectations of what you can get out of it.
Well,
right. So it's like, I think it's a tool, like anything else. And I think it can have positive consequences, and I think it depends on the person to be able to utilize that tool for those positive developments.
I guess. I don't know. I got my staunch Christian perspective of, save it for your wife. Because, I mean, I don't have any experience with it because I don't watch pornography. But there was a time in my high school life where I would look things up that technically weren't pornography, but I kind of treated them as such. And I always felt guilty and wrong while doing it. And even though I'd have that release with this actual kind of intention and desire, I was just like, this ain't it. There's something wrong with this fundamentally.
But what's really interesting is that you feeling a sense of guilt is not an implicit sign of it being bad. It's an implicit sign that you've been trained to see it as bad, socially. That more than anything. It's not like, I mean, if you are a pure theist, then yes, God would be planting that into your head. But it's also impossible to remove you from your circumstance of being raised in a household that taught you that that was bad.
Yeah.
Right?
I can concede to that.
So it's like, and once again, I'm not like telling you, go watch porn right now. Do whatever you want and whatever makes you happy. Don't do something that makes you feel bad and guilty. What I'm saying is, I think that pornography is often viewed, and very similar to other issues, in this dichotomous light of it's evil or it's good. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's a gray area. I think it can exist to empower people, and I think it could exist to hinder people, and draw out the worst urges in people. But I think because people are such this wide spectrum, I think it falls to the individual to really examine whether it's for them or not. Right? I do think, though, that it is a problem that so many people use it without really kind of examining why they're doing it and if it's good for them.
Oh, and that's where I think the self-destruction comes in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that, like anything else in your life, from drinking coffee to exercise, I think that it should be something that is engaged upon methodically and with reason and thought.
Yeah.
And if you ever and listen to yourself, if you ever feel bad for it, it's stop.
And I think that ties directly into the conversation we started with, with infrastructure and stuff. Roads aren't inherently bad, factories aren't inherently bad because they can produce a lot of good, but without regulating them, without moderating them, and without observing the side effects of overusing them, you can destroy when your intent was to create.
It's really interesting. I think that a great example to maybe end on, and feel free to add, of course, but Louisiana, one of the poorest states in the country. I watched a video that was about how really kind of BS that is. Louisiana, first off, maintains the delta of the Mississippi River Basin, one of the richest rivers on the planet, that is the entryway for the agricultural heartland of the United States. So there's a lot of activity there, port-wise, trade-wise. There's a ton of natural resources, oil and otherwise, a ton of farmland, a lot of manufacturing. So why does none of that wealth get to the people? It's because the people have allowed, over a long period of time, very gradual backsliding into deregulation, into giving up their rights to those things, into allowing themselves to be manipulated in that way. And maybe allowing themselves and maybe blaming the people for that, that's not right. But it's happened over a long period. It's been done to them over a long period of time. And I think it's only now, people are why are we poor? There's all this wealth here. And really taking a step to methodically think about that change can be done.
And I think the same thing stands for with pornography. You originally start doing it because you just kind of had these interests, these desires, these impulses, and you kind of pursue them, and you say, hey, this thing kind of satisfies that. And you just keep doing it, and then you stop thinking about why you're doing it or the potential inherent value in that. Personally, I disagree with that value, but I can see why people would see value in it. And I do agree that depending on a person's beliefs, it can be a tool. I would much rather have a person. Again, with the child sex robot example, I'd much rather have a person watching child porn than raping children.
But that's also why are there only two choices?
Yeah,
it's the thing, right? We don't exist in such a dichotomous world where there are only two choices. We exist in a world of gray, of in-betweens, of alternative solutions. Because I would agree with you in that situation, in that dichotomous option. But there's so much more nuance to the conversation that could be had, 1,000 other solutions that aren't either of those things.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's kind of something I believe. With pornography, if that's all that's available to someone, I guess go for it. But I feel like there are better ways to relieve that sexual tension that would be healthier for you. Like one thing that I see a lot of people do is like whenever they, especially in Christian circles, whenever they start feeling tempted to do something, they'll go for a walk, or they will work out. They will take those desires to those physical desires and kind of translate them into a different form. So instead of being horny because of my testosterone levels, I will go and work out, and that actually has had tremendous impact on me. I felt myself being so much less tempted to look at stuff that I think is wrong.
And that's not an
That's
not an inherently bad thing. I guess I kind of view a human being in a very holistic sense. I think that maybe you can, for a time, learn to ignore certain parts of yourself, but if you ignore them for too long, or if you push them aside for too long, or translate them into something else for too long, then you will either forget that part of yourself, or it will come back to haunt you. I think the best thing you could possibly do is understand who you are holistically, explore everything about yourself, and know what it is that you want, what you need, and then from there make those decisions. And I think the really bad, unfortunate part about being raised, not necessarily a Christian household, but definitely a morally lawful, I guess, like having moral laws that you have to follow household, whether religious or otherwise, is that a lot of people deny themselves from ever being able to experience those things just because they have an outside value that told them to. And I think something that's also very true is that, we've talked about this a lot, in the culture, the culture of the Bible is inescapable from the culture of the time it was written, and that culture is not inherently closer to God. In fact, I would argue in many ways it's not.
I would agree with that. Like a lot of the stuff in the Bible, especially in the book of Leviticus, is what theologians refer to as civil law, not biblical law. Where it's like, this is not describing what we should do. This is describing what the people at that time thought was important. And so it is important while you're reading Scripture. And this is why there's such value in having pastors and preachers and theologians. It's important while you're reading Scripture to know the context that thing was presented in, because Not everything is a parable from Jesus where we're supposed to apply to our own lives. Mm-hmm. So, especially the book of Numbers, this is literally just information about this society and these people and these leaders and stuff. And you're not supposed to derive spiritual meaning out of this ruler served for 40 years or something, right? Mm-hmm. But there are other examples of traditions and customs and laws that they had. And oftentimes in the Bible, what you'll see is God will uproot that and be like, no. Stop following your own tradition. Stop following your own religion. I'm what matters here. So he'll destroy a temple to an idol that they built, or he'll shatter an altar for a certain ritual that they developed and be like, no, you don't need that. You need me, right? And so you're definitely right in that throughout history, at least in Christianity, you would have societies that consider themselves Christians, but they developed certain rituals that actually brought them further from God as opposed to closer. Because Catholicism is a huge example of that. Huge. Where you turn religion into a government, and it just doesn't work because religion is not a government. Government focuses on leading large groups of people and regulating them, and that's not what God's about. God doesn't regulate us; He sustains us. Right? There's a huge difference there. So,
it's interesting. I think that because you're entirely right, the Roman Catholic Church is the Roman Catholic Church. It's often been argued, and I think with some validity, that the Roman Catholic Church is in some form a continuation of the Western Roman Empire. I mean, they spoke Latin. They were trained in Rome. They were administrated from the center of the old empire. But they, rather than using military or economic might, they utilized the power of faith to basically be the super international organization that guided most of Christendom. Of course, they didn't really control it literally, but there were vast tracts of land that were controlled by the church, and there were vast amounts of resources and wealth that was controlled by the church. And I think that obviously we saw a defiance of that inside the Reformation. What's really interesting about the Reformation, though, is that even those at the time revolutionary ideas were inherently informed by the cultures of the people that wrote them. I think that's a really good example of that is that Martin Luther didn't translate the Bible into some sort of universal God language. He translated it into German, right? With all of the cultural hangovers that would beget. And then from there, you have King John's Bible that we are the inheritors of today, and then all sorts of things like that.
King James, New International Version, New Living Translation. ESV. Like, but what I think is valuable about that is having those different translations, because anyone can pick up a Bible, but only people who are really studying Christianity holistically can understand the differences between versions. Because while most of the time there's not significant difference between versions, there will be some verses that are really powerful that have not completely different meanings, but can be taken very different ways because they're worded differently in different translations. Like one conversation that comes up a lot is like with like the LGBT movement is that in the book of Leviticus, I think it's Leviticus 18:24, some verse in there, I'm not sure on the specific one, and it says something about man shall not lay with man. And some people are like, no, it says man shall not lay with boy, so it's not talking about anti-gayness, it's talking about anti-pedophilia. And both sound like very Christian ideals. So some people are like, well, which way do you go? And I won't go off on a conversation with that because I've read on that and I have my own opinion and I won't bring it here. But anyway, it is fascinating to me how while overwhelmingly between like the different versions and translations and stuff, it says the same thing. The reason we have so many denominations is because people take it in such different directions, because they kind of build their own religion on top of the same foundation. Because it's easy to categorize Christianity as like one religion, but really when you look at like the definition of a religion, it's not this one thing. It's kind of just like it's a web of things that are similar but different in pretty significant ways sometimes.
For sure.
And so I've always found that interesting how people, even with like non-Christian religions, even with non-Abrahamic religions, it's like people just have a habit of taking things in the direction they want to take them. And that really quick, because we are starting to hit a pretty high timestamp here. My dad and I were talking about this. Humans have an insatiable desire for narrative.
Oh, for sure.
Like you look at how we conduct our scientific experiments. Like we're looking for explanations to things. We're looking for a story. The Big Bang Theory is our attempt to reconcile the nature of the universe and the apparent expansion that we've been seeing into a story. Evolution is trying to paint a picture of a story. Religion is trying to paint a picture of a story. And when we read it, like let's afford that. Hey, let's pretend religion is 100% accurate as it's written in the Bible. People still have different denominations because they have their own way of tying together all the elements of the Bible with their own narrative, regardless of which one's accurate. And so I find it so fascinating that we have that ability to do that. And that's what causation psychology is all about, because humans have what we call singular causation, where we don't look at everything that happens as an instantiation of a general causal law, like, oh, when X happens, Y will follow. We trace the events that we experience, and we build a logical framework for those events to have taken place in. So, like, let's say, you say some things like, oh, I was going to go rock climbing today, but now I have to hang out with Randy. Mm-hmm. Let's say you say that. I couldn't have predicted you would say that based off of general laws, but I can trace the logic of you saying that, because I know you. I'm like, okay, John has a girlfriend named Randy, and sometimes they hang out together, and sometimes John overschedules himself and has to choose one commitment over another, and so in this case he decided to go out with Randy, and he's justified in doing that because Randy's his girlfriend. Like, I build a causal network, not a causal network, a causal chain of thoughts due to what Campbell calls my imaginative understanding of you as a person. I'm like, okay, John thought this, knowing this, he did this, it makes sense.
And it usually happens very fast.
Yes, and we haven't seen that in other creatures. It's not necessarily impossible in other creatures, and there may be other creatures that have this sort of capacity, but as far as we can tell, it's unique to humans. Not just in the sense that it's like, oh, well, I know I have imaginative understanding. I don't know if you have it. Humans do act very differently, and of course, language makes it more apparent that they act differently and think differently than other animals do, because animals almost always act in terms of general laws. Like, my dog. Like, I make fun of my dog because she's so darn predictable. Like, she always does the same thing in like a certain circumstance. It's like, oh, I know when she sees something, she's gonna go yell and bark at it outside, unless I hold her back or whatever. And so, and even like with cats, which are infamously unpredictable sometimes, know them for long enough, you'll know exactly what they're going to do, right? Humans, you can't really do the same thing with humans. Not necessarily just because they're more complex, but just because fundamentally we think through things differently. And so I thought that it's been very interesting, watching Campbell argue for that. Because there are people who say, no, humans are also just general causal entities They're just more advanced, and so we don't have the capacity to understand the patterns as well as we could in, say, like a dolphin. But I do think Campbell makes a great point. And it's like, well, no, humans connect events in a way that just doesn't make sense. Like, biologically, you're spending more cognitive power trying to understand each individual instance, each individual event, than you would if you were just like,
that's it. End of story.
yeah, we're just like, oh yeah, that happened because this always happens when this happens. So there you go. And that is kind of fascinating and almost exciting to me. It's exciting to think that it's like, even if there are general laws that govern anything, we can't possibly comprehend that. So we build these narratives of singular causation, where it's just like, well, one thing happened after the other, and that's how this thing carried out. And then we have the empathetic ability to kind of embed ourselves in other people to understand where they're coming from. And that's why we can have conversations like this in the first place. Yeah. Because if it were all general laws, there'd be no value in having this conversation. Because
it'd be like Vulcans from Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. We'd be like, well, I kind of know everything you would ever talk about because I know all the general laws that govern your way of conversing with people. So there's no point in conversation because I can just predict everything you're going to say.
Exactly.
But humans don't operate on a predictive model of cause and effect. They operate on a sort of retroactive explanatory model of like, okay, I don't know all of the things that went into this sequence of events happening, but I can trace. Campbell uses the term trace the ballistics. I can trace the ballistics of this Sherlock Holmes talking to Watson and learning about his entire life based off of his eye movements alone. And cool stuff like that. So I've been enjoying the book because it just dives into...
It sounds like a really good book.
It is. Once I'm done with it, there's only 1 week left, I can lend it to you if you want.
I'd be up for that.
Through it.
Yeah. I have a large backlog of books right now because I buy books and then never read them. But I'd be happy to try and read it. At the very least, I haven't caught too much by a book as of late. But I will say, I think we're going to end it here.
We're going to end it here. 90 minutes.
All right.
Nice.
Let's see if I can do the Riz face. There we go.
The smolder. What a jolly bunch of lads we are. Well,
yeah, like
jolly
pair. I'm not sure if we're a bunch of lads.
Okay.
Or just like 2 lads.
We're 2 lads, a pair, a couple.
Do you have a pair on you?
I have a couple pairs on me, yes.
What?